woman, Dana Hooper. Dana Hooper has been an executive director of life services alternatives for the past 16 years. But his journey started many years ago when his son Brent was diagnosed with an intellectual disability. Over the years, he has become involved in many areas of IDD and in the IDD world. He became a leader in our community, working with government and nonprofits such as Branch Services, where he's currently a board member, Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired, where he's a former board member, and the State Department of Developmental Services and San Andreas Regional Center, where he was a past board president, and also where his son, currently, Brent, is a client in supported living. It's led him to his leadership role at LSA, where he can make a difference every day in the lives of the individuals that LSA serves. And so I want to thank you very much, Dana, for being here. And we're excited to hear from you. Dana?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Adia. I'm really glad to be here. Um, but probably more importantly, I wanted to thank Madhu for joining us tonight. Thank you, Madhu.
And thank you,
Um,
Dana.
it's my pleasure to introduce you all to Madhu Ranganathan. Madhu is a devoted mother of three, including her daughter Sitara, who resides at our LSA Cambrian home. She is the author of The Child Who Never Knew, A Lifetime of Love, Learnings, and Resilience, a heartfelt book celebrating her daughter's journey and honoring the special needs community, dedicated mothers, grandmothers, the invaluable support from the very able community. Professionally, she brings over 25 years of financial leadership. Madhu serves as the president, chief financial officer, and leader of corporate development at Open Text, where she has been a key player since 2018.
Dana, thank you very much to you and LSA for having me here.
Yes. Um, Hadia mentioned the format, but in this section, um, I'm going to be asking Madhu some questions, and we'll kind of go back and forth for a while, and then at some point, Hadia will cut us off, and we'll go to the Q&A where you can tee up some questions, and we'll respond. Um, so for this portion, I'd like to get started, with a question. Madhu, can you share your background and family, specifically the role of Sitara's grandmother as she grew up?
Yep, sure thing. It's a great place to start. And thank you again to you and LSA for having me here. I was born and raised in Chennai, the southern part of India. I came to the United States when I was about 22 years, and I've been here almost 40 years. I pursued further studies here. As you mentioned, I have a long career in finance. And in my book, The Child Who Never Knew, A Lifetime of Love, Learnings, and Resilience, I speak about a special needs daughter who is now 36 years and lives in one of the LSA homes in San Jose, about the role of her paternal grandmother. In fact, my chronicling of our daughter's journey will be incomplete without speaking about her grandma, who supported her for almost 28 years. And Sitara's condition throughout her life was dominated by medical trauma and complications. I speak about her grandma as Patti, Patti. It's a Tamil dialect in chapter 10 of the book. And this is not just about a grandma's care. I speak about a grandma who was truly uneducated, and yet at the core, she provided unconventional, unconditional, and unbiased love and support. To the readers of the book, I'd like to convey the message that all special needs individuals can benefit from a combination of medical, therapeutic, and administrative care alongside a care framework that can also be unconventional, unconditional, and unbiased. Just one example, when the doctor said Sitara as a baby will be unable to eat orally, it was grandma's persistent, unconventional approach that eventually led for Sitara to be able to eat orally. And needless to say, Sitara and our family would remain very blessed and grateful for grandma's role.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So Sitara grew up at home before transitioning to an LSA home.
Yeah.
What was the hardest part of this transition? And how did you overcome those obstacles?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dana. Thank you. It was a very hard part, and for that very reason, I speak to it in chapter 18 of the book, with what I think is a very apt title. I called it "Emotions, Explorations, and the Ultimate Letting Go." As the special needs child becomes an adult, it is an incredibly difficult situation to be faced with, as letting go can be an emotional, physical, and spiritual experience. Will I outlive my child, or will my child outlive me? As I mentioned, now Sitara lives in San Jose in one of LSA's homes under the amazing care of LSA staff and is very much at home. And let me also add that this remains a very personal choice specific to each family. Now, the hardest part was just getting my mindset convinced that placing our child in a home is a required step in the parenting of a special needs child, as much as any and all support we offer to the child. In our case, my husband, Ranganathan, he was there much earlier than I was. So the mindset was the hardest part. Because when the mindset is there, we all become very action oriented, right? We get engaged in the search process, in interviews and visits, whether or not there's a great solution for every parent. So, yet that mindset, when it's not there, the advancing age of the parents and special needs adult can make it extremely challenging to provide quality care on an ongoing basis. So, while it was my personal experience that I refer to in the book, I hope it resonates with thousands of mothers and fathers. Even when the mindset for me was not there, I decided to explore worldwide. As the universe would have it, Sitara's home today, away from home, is less than 10 miles from the home that she grew up in. I literally globe-trotted and I explored around the United States for a home. Each exploration effort brought me closer to the mindset that it was extremely important to find a home for Sitara's future. So through my book, I, very humbly want to give the full permissibility to each parent to adopt the mindset of letting go, develop an exploration process, whatever works for them, that suits each family, and really invest in all the efforts to find a home. We did, and thanks to LSA, Ranga, my husband, he serves today on the board of directors of LSA. And look, I truly wish every parent on this call and others that they do find a home away from home for their child.
Well, fantastic. In fact, in your book, you so aptly describe, I think, 5 lessons learned. And certainly you just talked about one, the mindset,
Yeah.
of letting go. But there were some other ones that were, I thought, quite helpful. Maybe you could just go through a couple of those lessons. I think the one that resonated with me the most is, um, and I'm quoting you, explore, explore, explore.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I call it Madhu's 10. I have been very fortunate to pursue a career as well as have a strong family and such. So it's a combination of all of that. I call it the powerful, integrated, and continuous learnings, right? A few of those inner strength. I think every special needs family and parent knows about inner strength. I talk about what does hard even mean in life when you have gone through a journey like we have done. The unknowns, the suddenness, anticipating and preparing. As I said, Sitara's journey was one of intense medical trauma. So I do speak about that. I talk about traversing mental zones. And, one time our special needs child is perhaps having a tantrum or is ill. And then you have to take a work call. And then you have an able sibling that you have to attend to. So we're constantly traversing the mental zones. I talk about behaviors with equipoise, right? I say that as a parent of a special needs child, our equipoise is so much more important as we deal with the anxiety and the challenges of our special needs child. And just a couple more: caution, yet ability to take calculated risk. I think every special needs caretaker and parent can speak to this. Acceptance and advocacy. I talk about that. Of course, perspective, perspective, perspective. So again, I talk about Madhu's 10, but it's really a culmination of all the experiences we've had.
Wonderful. So this obviously is a journey you went on with Ranga and others. What were some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah. Yeah, so Ranga and I have been married for 38 years and going strong. That 38 years, perhaps not a surprise, was not an easy and straight path, and no marriage is. But when you interject a journey like Sitara's, one can only imagine. I will say that at every turn, we were there together, sometimes not perfectly aligned, but we were there together. As I mentioned, in the process of even finding a home, the mindset, Ranga was there much before I was and much stronger than I was. So I kind of joined him in that part of the journey. Sitara's medical journey was like none other, and Ranga and I took turns at every moment. And today I'm grateful that we still stand tall after what seems like 10 life journeys squeezed into one. There are many examples to share. I'll just share one. In my book, I speak to the concept of and, A and D in caps. In chapter 4, the title of the chapter is And, a very strong and. Both Ranga and I saw life as an and. Sitara was always at the core, being our first child and just the journey she's had. Yet an aligned view on life to be an and allowed us both to pursue long-standing careers. We are blessed with two boys, young men now, who are the world's choicest siblings for a special needs sister. Ranga's a 10-year marathon runner. He does LSA's running programs. We have traveled and so on. My point is that the end allowed us to experience life knowing fully well that all of that gave us the fuel to serve Sitara. There's only one master for Ranga and I to serve, and that is Sitara, our daughter. And maybe one other point I'll say, we are both very aligned that the special needs ecosystem of doctors, hospitals, caretakers, we will be allies with them, right? Our role was to make all of them do well, so Sitara's needs were served well. So you will find us incredibly supportive, and even when it is time to be critical, we've always made the effort to remain very constructive, right? I would say the and being together, aligned in our journey, I think Dana played a very, very big role to where we are today and where Sitara is today.
Well, fantastic. This next one I can identify with. Can you talk a little bit about trying again for a sibling and what Ardash has taught you about being a sibling to Sitara?
For sure. It's a great question. Maybe my favorite question. The topic of siblings with special needs it will remain my most favorite topic. And we've been very blessed with two sons. So Adarsh is our oldest son, and Kailash is our third child and youngest son. Now, the literal meaning of Adarsh in the Indian language is ideal. He has been the ideal son for us, especially in reference to our daughter. In my book, Chapter 11, I write about Sitara's first sibling, true to his name, the ideal Adarsh. He was born 6 years after Sitara, and with little to no exaggeration, Adarsh's growing was generously interspersed with the challenges and the hospital care of his sister. Spending weekends in the surgery wards of hospitals was commonplace for him. Her challenges became the art of the possible for Adarsh, who receives full credit for whatever sense of humor Sitara has, and she's also less rigid in his company. And the most important thing I would say is for Sitara and other special needs children to develop trust in someone can be very hard. And I would say Sitara trusts Adarsh. And in my book, I say all these situations really required him to help his sister that brought him closer to what he refers to as his normal sister. Now, as a mother, seeing Adarsh being the sole sibling often would tear my soul many times. And I would say if the universe would ever be so kind, I really want to have another sibling for Sitara. Call it strategic family planning, right? And then there was Kailash. He's our Gen Z, who I gave birth to when I was 40. And one could say that was a very bold step for any mother. It was. And so today, Sitara is blessed with two wonderful brothers. And Adarsh is married, and his wife Pooja is a sister and sibling as well. Just all around a win for Sitara. I'll say one last thing. So in my book, Kailash, our Gen Z, we asked him to write his own chapter about his sister. He calls his sister Akka, A-K-K-A, another Tamil dialect for the word sister. It's a beautiful chapter. My favorite sentence is where he says, if Akka, his sister, can live her life with such tenacity, the least we as a family can do for her in return is to support her. No matter the severity of her condition, without fail, Akka, her sister, always gets back up. So let me conclude by saying the chapter on siblings is dedicated to all the siblings in the special needs community.
Wow, that's very touching. So what inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, so Dana, that's a multi-million-dollar question. And I would say in your home, when we had the LSA event where I stuck my neck out and I said, here's our journey, and I would love to write a book. And that was a few years ago. So that was really a catalyst. And I'm going to call you home as the best vibe I got to stay on this commitment. So Sitara's journey continued, and our lives evolved very dynamically with millions of precious moments and scores of high volatility, screeching halt moments. A few things became abundantly clear. We just felt plain old fortunate and blessed that we're alive today. And me at 60 years old and Sitara at 36 years old, right? Especially given the fragility of life these days. At the same time, our journey, we felt, is not probably one of a kind. It is a journey that many special needs families go through. So there could be a chronicle with real life incidents and characters and pictures to honor the special needs community. Could there be a playbook or a manual of real life events that can give hope to many families with or without special need? That was another thought. Now, with all that wonderful vision, I still needed time to write. And as you mentioned, I have continued to pursue a very demanding career. And yet, turning 60, which I did in May, and the nagging view of how fragile life can be, it really came upon me that to celebrate Sitara, to celebrate the special ecosystem, to celebrate the families, I have to finish the book. And that's what I did. And big thanks to my family for their support. I'm sure all the readers, I hope they would agree. Sitara is the child who never knew. Why that title, right? How effective and influential she has been by bestowing upon us a lifetime of love, learnings, and resilience. That journey needed to be chronicled.
Well, one of my favorite chapters uh,
Yeah.
is facing and fighting the system. And you talk about these different areas of advocacy. And it's really something that every parent should read before they go through this whole journey. And if maybe you could share some of the, again, lessons learned in terms of advocacy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, facing and fighting the system, as you rightly said, that's the name of the chapter. Um, I say in my book on page 64, if you're a special needs mother in the early part of your child's journey, we hope this knowledge in the book will fuel and guide you. And look, we sit here alongside my family with a treasure chest of knowledge and experience, and that is what we want to share. Um, if I am who I am today, whether or not my child was born in the recent past or 30 years ago, I think given my personality, drive, our family history, and support, we would do everything we did. As someone very famous said, we can connect the dots looking backwards. We can't really connect the dots in the future. But if I were to pull the future forward, I would have done all the things I have done to date. And the support we've received from LSA, particularly during the pandemic, was just absolutely amazing. So I would say Sitara is truly blessed at every turn. She received the best of care, the best of experts and support. And if that is her karma, I believe that would continue even today, right? And in terms of facing and fighting the system and the need to build communities, all of that stays true in the today more modern, more connected post pandemic world. And perhaps the connectedness may make the building of the communities easier than what my family and myself went through. And lastly, I do speak in my book several kind words and very sincerely meant and recognition to Sitara's doctors, academic medical institutions, and caregivers. And having patients and families recognize caregivers' contributions. And as I said earlier, having a more constructive attitude, ally attitude, I think it's just so important. And today's very stressed healthcare and other administrative environments.
Well, I have to say on behalf of LSA that um, we loved and continue to love you and your family joining our family.
Sure.
And that always felt special.
Yeah.
You give tributes to a lot of different groups, and you know, who do you think would benefit the most from the book? And um, yeah, just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I paid tributes to the special needs ecosystem and very deservingly so. As I said, doctors in medical institutions, caregivers, fathers, mothers, siblings. And I refer to so many who have intersected in our lives as angels and karma yogis. And I also paid tribute to Sitara as my BFF, my best friend forever. All of this has spread through the 20 chapters of my book. I do speak of mothers and women. That's chapter 14, a tribute to all of them. Being a woman, Sitara being a woman, right? I say mothers are unstoppable. special needs mothers are forces of love, learnings, and resilience themselves. Now, who do we hope? My family hopes the book will reach. And if you're okay, if I can be very ambitious, right? I would like the book to reach every family in this world, every professional supporting the special needs community, every doctor, every nurse who's applauded in my book, in every country. At a minimum, I would like to get a language translation of the book into maybe Spanish and two dialects in India, in a country of 1.4 billion people, and of course in the United States. And lastly, there's a chapter in the book called Standing Ovation. And this is about an entire high school community that stood up to cheer Sitara receiving her high school diploma in 1997 when she was part of the special needs program at Saratoga High School. I would love for that chapter, at a minimum, to be a required reading in all schools to inspire the able students how well they should support and love the special needs community, given that many, many schools are in sort of inclusive mode. So, Dana, if I can dream, I'd love for this book to reach far and wide.
Well, you're a big dreamer, and I love it.
Thank you.
You talk a lot about, your struggles leading up to and through letting go. So when did you know that was the right decision? When did you know it really worked?
Yeah. So, as I said, my mindset took a while. So, as I explored, every step brought me closer to the mindset that, yes, we need to find a home for Sitara for her future. Right. And so it took a few years. And I will say that the exploration is something that anybody like me who can't make a decision on this should continue to pursue. But I can tell you, Dana, when we walked into the LSA home at Cambrian in San Jose, I can speak for my husband as well. We knew at that point that we we wanted to make sure if Sitara could find a home there, right? And the part two of that is we remember talking to Sitara about here's an opportunity, here's where you can go, and her response was instantaneous, like, yes, I'd like to go. And last not least, as you mentioned, the family, I really want to recall Susan Leritz, our wonderful manager, who, when we met her at Cambrian Home, said that LSA is looking to build relationship with families first, and of course the clients and the residents. So all of that really aligned with Ranga and myself as to what we were looking for and what that would mean. Again, every month, every year has proven that Sitara also sees her home as her home. And last not least, the pandemic really took this to another level. For the first time, when we couldn't take care of her, when she contracted COVID, but she was taken care of in this home with the amazing LSA staff. And perhaps the ultimate letting go really happened then. And truly, we haven't looked back.
Well, fantastic. One last
Sure.
question. Is there is there something I should have asked you about, or some aspect of the book that you think is, really important to share with our audience tonight?
Yeah, so a couple things, and like thank you again for the opportunity. And look, the book is heartfelt emotions, and I have been unvarnished about the emotional side in my book. My family has been unvarnished as they all agreed to publish our real life, real pictures, and narrated experiences. Some of the readers to date have said they were teary eyed and well with emotions, and I hope that emotions of relatability, of hope, and inspiration. And I also hope the book will convey that emotions are not just okay, they are the fuel to passion, action, and experiences. And I think for every reader, Sitara's journey will strengthen the deep rooted values of empathy, care, and gratitude. And I remain very grateful and will ask for any and all support to LSA and the audience here to continue to spread the word about the book.
Well, fantastic. So back to you, Hadia.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, actually it almost seemed like a movie scene, the chapter where you talked about Sitara's graduation. And just I could visualize it the entire time, and it was very, very emotional. and I wish somebody would make it into a movie. I mean, it was, anyways, as far as textbook inclusion and being able to personify what this world should look like, right, through the eyes of children, but unfortunately it doesn't. That moment was iconic, and I was glad that you put it in the book. And I wish we had more moments like that. Sorry, I was holding that in since you guys talked about that question. I was like, oh, me, but it's not a classroom. So we are really excited to go ahead and get this Q&A started up. Thank you again, Madhu and Dana, for that really, really jam-packed conversation. There were so many things that really stuck out and actually made me want to ask even more questions in the conversation. But this is our moment. If you have not put any questions in the Q&A section down at the bottom. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think something got turned off or power shut off in our house. So that's show business. That's what happened. So anyways, that being said, you guys still have just a few more seconds to put a few things in the Q&A. And while we do that, my questions, mostly my questions are going to center around some of the things I heard you address. And then some of the things I didn't really hear you say, and I never really thought about it before. But when you talked about facing and fighting the system, this was important for you to put in the book, Madhu. What about for those families that feel like they don't even know where to start when it comes to advocacy and when it comes to community? Maybe because of isolation, maybe it's their child, their son or daughter, brother, sister, is stigmatized. Where would somebody start when it comes to advocacy, both in the system and within the community at large?
Yeah.
Madhu, can you talk a little bit about that? And then right after that, I'm going to go to you, Dana. I'd love to hear your experience as a father of a son with developmental disabilities. Madhu?
Yeah, thank you, Hadia. So a couple things, right? One, I introduced two, I mean, a few chapters, but the two that are relevant to your question is, maybe three of them, is facing and fighting the system, which special needs families can attest to that we do that every day, right? And it's continuous. It seems never ending. So I really want to bring that together. Again, the hope is, could that be a manual playbook that families can use on a very continuous basis? I also have a chapter here on chapter 16. It's called The Community. I added the chapter again. I added my experience, but whether you're living in Europe as a special needs family, or in Asia, or in North America, the concept of the community still remains. The details of the community could be different from geography to geography and location to location. So I added the chapter community to really speak to whether you're in the early part of the special needs journey or the mid or later, knowing what community is out there, and if it is there, engaging in that community in whichever way possible. I think that's going to add knowledge. It's going to add emotional support, right, for the child and also for the families. And the third part is really when you talk about stigmatized, I really accentuated or tried to the siblings aspect, right? The special needs siblings, I call them as torchbearers of the future. These are able siblings, and they know this, they're sort of, like special needs sibling really well, but since they're able, they can do so much more. And God bless our sons, and they have been torchbearers to date. And maybe I'll add a comment that our son Adarsh, like Dana mentioned, his friends have contributed a lot to the special needs community in so many different ways, as these are all young adults, like 30 years old. So I would say read the chapter on facing and fighting the system, the chapter called the community, and both the chapters that speak about the strength of siblings.
Love it. I absolutely love that. Dana?
Um, well, I mean, I think what's key is finding those resources and getting support. And, certainly people who've been through it, have a lot to offer. Hard to find them. But I found it back in the day at Saratoga High where Brent went in special
Mm.
ed, his special ed teacher was just amazing resource and both practical, but probably more important, inspirational, encouraging that exploration. Um, Support groups, if you could find one. Um, Parents helping parents. Regional center has some resources. You better be an advocate going in. It's not going to just automatically drop in your lap.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, it's one of the reasons why we do what we do, including offering topics and trends, because, you know, it's a tough challenge. And to the extent that we can bring, um, facts and insights and to various topics, find those speakers that really, have great stuff to share. We feel like, we're helping this community um, grow together.
I agree. What I'm hearing from both of what you said and these similar but different experiences, because you are two individual families and two individual people, is, if your tribe is a location, then the communication really is the highway to get to that location. You're
Yeah.
not gonna make it to your tribe with keeping your mouth shut and
Yeah.
not asking questions. I think there was a few people who've already asked, and for those who are frothing at the mouth to get this book, which you absolutely should be, we're going to drop that link in the chat for interest in the book. And Madhu is promising that she might even sign a few copies of the book. But to get it into your hands, if you sign up for this interest list, it's not available on Amazon yet. Just give us a little bit for that. Sometime the end of this month. We're hoping that's when we'll be able to pick it up. But she will, if you give us your information, she will make sure that you receive the book. And if you'd like to give in return, she's asking that you provide your donations to LSA, and we'll show you when and where to get to that in a moment. But back to the advocacy question, a lot of times you guys are pointing out, and I'm hearing both of you say, you'll find that advocacy in siblings, you'll find that advocacy in family, you'll find that support in that tribe and the teachers and the special ed teachers. And then I think another part that you said, Dana, that really is sticking out to me, and you've kind of said it throughout your book and throughout tonight, Madhu, is that you found your tribe, your people who get it, right? Through LSA and through organizations like LSA. Dana, you dropped a few, PHP to name one, and then a few other organizations like ours, providers, where people are just volunteering information. Now more than ever, there are opportunities to learn, and I encourage you to do so. We're going to continue to provide resources, but I encourage you to learn also from the community that's within these communities and talk to the parents. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this. So we have just a few more minutes left here. I want to make sure that people's questions get answered. But before we do that, I wanted to take a couple of selfish moments myself to ask Madhu just a few follow-up questions from this talk. One of which was, what would be your message to parents who are raising a child with developmental disabilities? If you could send one message out to them, it doesn't have to be one syllable. It doesn't even have to be one sentence, but if you could give them an uplifting message, what would that be?
Yeah, what a great question. Chapter 3 of my book says discovery, shock, and the proverbial why us. I think as a parent of a child with special needs or disabilities, the discovery, the shock, and the proverbial why us For some families can last for a long time, for others it might not. Each family is individual, right? So I would say, as you focus me, Hadia, on just giving one message, right? The message would be acceptance, then advocacy, right? And then the future. I think there's a lot that's into this word acceptance as I use that perhaps lightly. It's not, as everyone knows, but I do think that acceptance is important. Acceptance does not mean we do not place every minute iota of effort to furthering the condition of the child or the young adult, and the universe is kind. I don't think Sitara would be here today at 36 years old when the doctors told us when she was barely a few months old that they just didn't even know about her future and what that would entail. So when I look back, it was acceptance and advocacy, and then everything else that we kind of put in there. And maybe one other thing I'll just add in terms of message is that I do want to share this. When I was socializing the idea of writing a book, I spoke with a parent of a special needs child who's 40 now and has been on wheelchair for a long time. And I did ask that family your thoughts, and my friend had a very pertinent question. Said, "Who would want to read a sob story?" That really struck a chord with me. So as I gathered the facts of this 36-year journey, I'm not trying to be a cheerleader, rah rah rah, but I really wanted to bring the positive, the constructive angle to this journey, and that would be an added message I would give, to just say, try if you can, always to be constructive, hard to be positive, but always be constructive. Right? It's a long answer to your question, but those would
No,
be,
it
yeah.
I wouldn't dare try to sum you up. But
Yeah.
if I was listening, hey Dana, talk about a professional development moment. If I was listening, right, what I heard you say, Madhu, was have hope.
Yeah.
Have hope that the future, and in any regard, as
Yeah.
long as you're still living, as long as there's still breath in your lungs, there's hope.
Yeah.
But the other part of that I guess is kind of stuck in my craw, and I'm hearing you say it, is that a lot of the things that happen, right? If you sit around and you said your friend said, who wants to read a sob story? You sit around and you sink into the sadness,
Yeah.
then that's not going to be constructive or progressive for the situation that you're in. And so that loaded word of acceptance
Yeah.
came in. And so that was very strong. Dana, I see you shaking your head. You've been there, done that. Tell us.
I just wanted to add my 2 cents. I
Yeah.
would be acceptance too. And, it starts with you as a parent accepting this child of yours, accepting their differences, accepting them for what they are and who they are. And then I think you can build from there. It certainly you can build hope, you can aspire to, you know, moving forward and making best of the situation. But, you know, and for me, of course, it wasn't just about my son, it generalized to life, you know, accepting people for who they are. And frankly, moving away from judgments. And it was always tough because over the years, I mean, Brent's just enough older that people still talked about institutions, and his first school was a special school, right, where everybody was special. And I just think that I mean we've come a long way, but you has to have to build from acceptance, and then you can move forward on actions. The other thing that was toughest for I think me is and I several of my friends were siblings, and my son's siblings, they're the ones that had the hard time. They're the ones that got ridiculed for having a brother like that. And they're the ones that had to learn how to accept it and fight it. And so never underestimate how tough it can be for a sibling and how much the parents expect the siblings to step up, particularly as they get older in life. So I think that's, you know, those chapters and that, that talk of Sitara's siblings is pretty special because they're clearly, you know, have and will continue to step up big time.
Yeah, one of
And,
the things,
uh,
yeah. Oh, sorry, go
yes,
ahead.
yes,
You're gonna
no, sorry,
respond?
Hadia, could I just add two comments,
Yes,
right?
please, please.
Again, I say in the book, back to Dana's point, when Adarsh was younger, his famous quote to his friends, when he was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, his famous quote to his friends was, "I will not be friends with you if you make fun of my sister." So that he was bold enough to say that, right? And the other thing I was going to add, since I also come from the corporate world, Hadia, when you mentioned hope, this thought occurred to me. In the corporate world, you will hear cliches saying hope is not a strategy. Okay. But in our world, hope is definitely part of the strategy. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Wow. We have to unpack that when we're not being recorded. Okay, all right. So this is something that I've heard both of you say, and Dana doesn't know that I'm gonna ask this, but I'm gonna remark in the fact that you guys are similarly advocating for your children today, but just in a different way. You guys are not front lines as far as their day-to-day services, meaning that they're not living in your house with you every day now. But you still advocate for them in a whole new way. Dana, you are, on task force with DDS, and Madhu, your husband Ranga is on the board of the housing provider and service provider for your daughter. Can you talk a little bit about that shift, both of you, about when it transitions, their transition as an adult, and how your support has transitioned on a systemic level? Does that make sense? Where are the battles that you're fighting now for all children in your child's home or within your child's system? What does that look like? What does that taste like? Maybe you can tell us just a few bullet points of what that role includes and how it's changed in your relationship with your son or with your daughter.
Yeah. Dana, please go ahead. I'll follow you.
Okay, well, I mean, for me, you know, I guess I felt pretty good about where Brent was and the plans and all the things that have been put in place. So I was looking around to give back. And so I sat on these boards and it became pretty obvious that there were a lot of people who didn't have the resources, you know, didn't have, the understanding of the landscape, and didn't have anybody in their court advocating for them. So that's when I kind of made that transition that it's not about me, it's not about my son, it's about all of those people out there like my son who could use another advocate. And so that's what prompted me to jump into LSA, right? Not serving my son, having nothing to do with my son, but a place where I thought I could make a difference. And you also and I'm sure Madhu would say this, right? You could be on the sidelines or you could be in the game. I was on the SARC board. I felt like I was on the sidelines. It was time to get in the game. And that's why I came to LSA to be in the game.
Well
Yeah.
said. Well said.
Yeah,
Madhu?
yeah. No, thank you, Dana. Dana's wealth of experience here is incredible. I would say for me personally, no, Hadia, for the longest time, I was spending time only advocating for Sitara, and just given her medical complexities, it was one thing after another. So I always found myself advocating for her, either in the school system or hospitals and doctors, and same for Ranga as well. I did join the board I was there for about 5 years, Pacific Autism Center for Education, PACE, in the Bay Area. And that was my first exploration to be part of a nonprofit where I thought it could open windows to find a home for our daughter. And I really enjoyed that experience. But coming back to the giving back, I think where we are today as a family, where we have been in the last several years, right, it's an incredible opportunity to give back. We are delighted that Ranga is on the board of LSA. He's now retired after a 40-year tenure in engineering and semiconductor industry, but he's able to bring his professional experience, his passion around running and fitness, and most important, being a parent of a resident, our daughter. If you ask him, I'm sure he'd say the same thing. He's deeply representing all parents of special needs, right? And I have a chapter in the book that I've dedicated to parents and fathers. And now, as we talk about Ranga, the boys, if LSA has an event, the boys know that they have to be there supporting LSA, and they are happy to be there, right? So we are in a great zone in our lives where it is about giving back. It is less about advocating for our daughter, but more about giving back to the whole ecosystem in whichever way we can.
Yeah. Living day saints is what they're called. That's what they're called. People who give back after they've already given so much. I will say this, a lot of the lessons, both you, Dana, and Madhu have neurotypical children and neurodiverse children. And the dynamic in the household is something that we don't talk about much, because we're in service to those who have a loved one with IDD or a individual with IDD. I know that a few times we've referenced siblings throughout this conversation. Can we talk just for a moment about all in which your family, or rather, I should say your spouse, Ranga, has done when it comes to LSA? I think it's been understated, that chapter in the book. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that relationship that Ranga has with Sitara, and how that's made a difference. And then Dana, of course, I know that you co-parent, with your children. I'd love to hear your version, your story as well. But Madhu, can you talk a little bit about the that part of the book for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again. So the chapter dedicated to parents, fathers, um, initially, I really came to that chapter from a different angle. I'm generalizing here, and in general, women tend to bear the cross on childcare, whether it's special needs or not, and this is pretty a global phenomenon. So I really want to dedicate a chapter to the fathers and highlight the role that Ranga has played from birth to now to later. And one of the things I speak about is from the very early days. Look, we were both very young parents. Just imagine a 23-year-old woman and a man in his 20s, our first child. From the time of 2 months old, being told she's blind and she's got all of this, right? So again, back to the role of the father from that age onwards. I speak about this. Ranga was never embarrassed to call Sitara his child and to speak about her condition. And same thing for me, but speaking about fathers in general. And then it just exponentially grew from there in terms of the things he's done or the times he's spent in activities. And I do hope I use the word manual playbook in a very sincere way. And if there's any father out there who is even remotely concerned about having a child with special needs, right, I hope he would read this and be
Wow.
motivated by the fact that the special needs child and acceptance, as I actually mentioned. So again, each chapter is intended. The dream, as I told Dana, the dream is it explodes into learnings for the much broader community. And now, fast forward after 36 years, Ranga serves on the board of LSA, as we mentioned. And but you're not just here. I mean, he does nonprofit work around the globe, right? But I do think the roots come from accepting your child for what the universe has given, but not stopping at all in what you can do to further not just your child, but the entire community.
Wow. Wow. Um,
Beautiful.
Dana, do you want to speak to that for just a moment?
Um, yeah, I may have forgotten what the question was, but uh,
We're just talking about the ecosystem within the family.
I'm just kidding. But so in my case, Brent's mother and I were no longer together after Brent got to be uh, high school age. And what I've found is we might not have been able to agree on hardly anything, but we've always been able to partner with respect to Brent.
Yeah.
And each of us had the role. Um, I gosh, I would say this even if she was on or not on the call, but in terms of advocates, I was the calm, cool, collected advocate. She was the
Mm,
pit bull, right? If they wanted to take resources away, in the classroom, you know, she would lock horns. And so I think we made a pretty good uh, team, and yet we always, I think, the toughest thing was always, bringing the siblings along,
yeah.
um, and it was particularly hard for so Brent had a 2 years younger, um, twins, boy and a girl, and they're star athletes, and and Brent's special ed aide is the varsity football and basketball and baseball coach, and he and Brent had a special relationship. So he's bringing Brent to the bench, kind of the water boy, and Tyler's the star on the team, and he's taken, you know, real or unreal, he's taking a lot of grief. And I wish, he could have said just what your son said.
Yes.
Um, and so I think that was probably the hardest thing. But when you do get everybody in the family working together, it is really powerful, and um, you can accomplish a lot.
Yeah.
Sounds like Brent has quite a tribe, doesn't he?
Yeah, he was always people always, and this is true with a lot of people in this population, they looked at the book and its cover and they made some assumptions. And but he was incredibly intuitive
Mm-hmm.
and very thoughtful and very loving and social. And so people would underestimate him, and so sometimes that would lead to frustration on his part because you know they're you know treating him in a way that wasn't very respectful.
Mm.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
so again, for me, I learned all these life lessons, right? Don't sell somebody short. Don't judge the book by its cover. Take the time, to get to know someone. Um, and people often would ask me, well, what I do in terms of inclusiveness. Well, if I'm in the safe way, and I see someone who, you know, and I probably would say I could spot someone with an IDD a mile away.
Yeah.
I go over and I engage them, and and try and make that contact. Being, of course, cognizant. I don't want the parents to be, feel like I'm out of line or anything. But so it's to take it's my message to everyone is you take the first step to be inclusive, and the rest will follow.
I love
Very,
that. I
very,
love that.
yeah.
We're just at time. And Madhu, there's one question that came in. Thank you so much, Dana, for and for Madhu for all that you've been sharing. I do want to get to this one question and then make sure we have time
I
for all
see
the
that.
fun little
I see.
tidbits. The question is, what sort of ecosystem that needs to be developed in any kind of country, in a developing country, to provide the best support for kids? I hope this book will answer his question. And he says, thanks, excellent webinar.
Yeah.
Madhu, can you speak to that for a moment and we'll give you the final word and then we'll try to close out this webinar for those who've been patient, very patient.
Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you for the question. And you're Jagan from Chennai. I appreciate you attending. Wow. Look, I do hope the book will answer your question. We speak to the community, we speak to facing and fighting the system, we speak to advocacy. Again, since I'm in the North America corridor, the actual facts of perhaps the North America corridor, and I'd love to chat with you and others over the course of time offline. But I do think it can be applicable to any geography. The details may be different, but I do believe the fundamental building blocks around the system, the advocacy, as well as all of that could be great, right? So happy to chat offline.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all of your questions and for joining us this evening. If you're interested in receiving Madhu's book, The Child Who Never Knew, A Lifetime of Love, Learnings, and Resilience, sign up on the form in the chat. And then, as always, keep in touch and register for the remainder of IDD Topics and Trends. By the way, if you'd like to connect with Madhu, here's her handle on LinkedIn. I don't want to brag, but she added me. And you can be added to. You could follow Madhu on LinkedIn as she'll be sharing, especially when her book drops on Amazon later on this month. And we are really excited for that. In the meantime, there's a link again in the chat that you should be receiving. I am putting it in there for us right now. This interest list, if you give us your information, she's promising to personally make sure that you get your hands on one of these books. And then also making sure that if you like to, in any type of form, return payment or donate, that you can give those proceeds directly to LSA. And you can do so by going to lsahomes.org/donate. That being said, we're so happy to have you with us tonight. Thank you again, Madhu, for all that you shared. And Dana's opened up his coat and let us see all his wares. He's been very forthcoming, and we've appreciated the candidness and the honesty of both of you tonight as parents and as advocates for the IDD community. Again, that book is The Child Who Never Knew, A Lifetime of Love, Learnings, and Resilience. Madhu, thank you again for being here, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Hadia. Thank you, Dana. Thank you to LSA. I'm
Yeah.
extremely honored.
Yes. And so if you like this conversation, join us again next week. We'll have the remainder of our IDD Topics and Trends series throughout the month of July. But next week, we're going to be speaking with Heidi Cartan, a founding executive director at Common Roots Farm, and that's on July 9th. You won't want to miss that. Also, you can find the link to register here on screen and also in the chat. And then, of course, we mentioned it several times. Ranga has started what has now become a movement within the IDD community, which is our LSA's Run Home. That's going to be happening in September, and we're really excited about it. If you'd like to join us then, go ahead and register now. This week, from the 1st to the 5th, you'll be able to get 20% off. So a July 4th discount for signing up early. And we're so excited. You're welcome to sprint, run, walk, roll, or you can just donate to support the IDD community in any way that you can. Thank you again so much for joining us. Sorry, we're just a couple minutes over time. You can contact us and continue the conversation on our social media platforms. And again, don't forget to join us next week. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody, and thank you for joining us.
Good night.
Yeah, good night.